Hello, hello, and welcome to another week of Living Well with Coach Racquel. I am Coach Racquel, your guide to everything wellness. And I just want to thank, before I jump into today's show, I want to thank She Is Still Dope for providing this platform for purpose-driven women. And I just want to thank all of you who show up and who are supporting this cause. Remember, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Fit to You Wellness at all social media platforms, as well as you can also visit us on the website at www.fit2wellness.com. You can also check us out as She Is Still Dope on all of their social media platforms, as well as YouTube, if you want to watch more of these amazing shows. So if you've missed a week, be sure to check out some of the other weeks, because we are constantly providing you with simple, practical, everyday tools and tips to live well. And so this month, the month of March, our theme is all about women, wellness, and wisdom. And so I am excited because I have some amazing guests for you this month that are going to be talking to you about some of their businesses that they've started, or different ideas, options, wellness providers to really help and support you on your wellness journey. And so our scripture for this month is 1 Corinthians 12, and starting at verse 4 and just kind of going down. And the reason that I picked that scripture for this month is because it really is about learning and using the gifts that we have. And I don't think I can say this enough, but we have to make sure that we're stepping into the roles that we're supposed to be in, because when we get out of alignment with that, that's when that's where stress lives, right? In that intersection, when we step out of who we are and our purpose. And, the beauty of stress is that it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's just a way for us to get back on track, or to notice, to be curious that something in our life needs some of our attention, and to really give it that focus that we need. And so today, and you can't see my shirt. I wonder if I stand up a little bit, you might be able to see it. There it is. It says, "Winning the game I'm playing." And that is the theme for today. I got this shirt during my mastery program in coaching. And I remember when I first got it thinking, like, what does that mean? And they explained it, I'm sure. But at the time, it just I hadn't connected with what that meant. But now, having really lived the experience myself, I truly do understand that we are always winning the game that we're playing. So basically what that means is that whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you're deciding, however you're showing up for yourself, however you're showing up in situations, you are winning. And it doesn't always mean that you're winning at the right thing. Sometimes we're winning at poor choices. Sometimes we're winning at making bad habits. But the thing is that we always have a choice. And that's really what that means, right? We're winning the game that we're playing because we're always choosing, right? God gave us the ability to choose and to decide for ourselves. We are one of the only beings that are able to really do that here on earth. And so as we're doing that, we are getting to decide whether or not, or which games we're wanting to play, right? And so even when we think of life in general, we really have to understand the roles that we're playing, right? Just like a game, if you were playing Scrabble or Twister or something like that, you need to know and understand what the rules are and the concept of the game, right? And so the same thing for us. If we are to win this life and to win this wellness journey that we're in, we have to understand what the rules are. And part of that is understanding our purpose. And that really is the larger goal of the wellness journey, is understanding your purpose, right? God gave each of us gifts. He gave each of us a purpose, and locked down deep inside. And for some of us, it might be a little higher up. And for some of us, it's still hidden under some layers. But at the end of the day, we each have a purpose. We each have a role that we're here to play. And we have to find out what that is. And so the first part of winning the game is finding out what your role and purpose is. And so one of the things that we can do is go into the word, right? You know, God's word provides everything that we need in every situation. And so in 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about those spiritual gifts. And, you know, what I love about it is that it didn't say that we all had the same gift, right? We all are given a different measure of these gifts. And so when you go to Romans 12, it lists out some of the gifts that we have in there. It talks about, some people having gifts of healing, and some people having gifts of miracles and prophecy and discernment, and the gift of serving and tongues and all of these different gifts. And Romans 12 actually is another place that you can go to learn about some of those same or some additional spiritual gifts. And I know for me in my journey, there was a time when I really didn't understand what my gift was or what my purpose was. And there was this constant frustration for me, right? Because I knew that what I was doing in that moment wasn't in alignment with who I was supposed to be, but I didn't know what that was at the time. And so it really helped me to get in the word and start asking. You know, part of my prayer turned from asking God for things to asking God for wisdom. I always attribute my gray hair to that prayer, but asking God for wisdom of what it is that your purpose is. So for some of you, you may already know what that is. And I encourage you to just keep going deeper and really figuring out how to use that. And then there are some of you who have no idea, and that is totally okay too. But today is the day that you now get to start to shine that light of curiosity onto that purpose. What is it that you're supposed to be doing? What is the gift that you have that God provided you with, that He put you here to do? And the gifts that we have are not for ourselves. We have these gifts so that we can go out and share them with the world. There's someone out there that's hurting. There might be someone out there that's confused. There might be someone out there that needs help. And you are the one who's going to be able to do that. And one of the things about learning our purpose is oftentimes we find it in our life patterns, right? The journeys that we're on. And I know so often, you know, we want to blame the enemy and we want to blame other people and other circumstances, but sometimes those things had to happen in order for us to find our place and find our way. And I'm sure if all of you look back over your life up until now, there are some things that you may have gone through that at the time you really probably would have preferred not to have to deal with that. But now, as you look back, you recognize that that thing had to happen in order for you to be where you are, or for you to be on the path to where you're supposed to be going. And so, you know, part of this journey is really knowing and understanding that, and asking God for that wisdom so that you can then begin to step into that, right? Because every day that you go without using that, there's still going to be that stirring up inside of you. It's not going to go away. I often tell my clients, our body always gets what it needs. And I don't necessarily just mean our physical body, but I also mean like our spirit. You know, it gets what it needs. It gets what it wants because you were born with a purpose. There's not one person here that does not have a purpose. It's just that we've learned over time to stop listening to that. And so go in there, get in the word, check out 1 Corinthians 12. Read the whole thing because there's a lot in there. Or you can check out Romans 12:8. And there are so many other places in the Bible where it talks about some of the gifts. You can even do that through reading some of the stories, right? Who in there reminds you of you, right? You know, or who in there is doing something that feels really close to your heart, and just check in with that. So that's how we win the game we're playing, right? We first have to know our role. We have to know who we are, and we have to step into that. And then we have to learn to let go, right? Because sometimes the expectations that we have for ourselves and for other people are holding us back from being the people that God has truly called us to be. It also keeps us from really being able to bring peace into our lives. And so what do I mean by that? So the first part is, what expectations do you have for yourself? And I'm talking to my women today, you know, especially because a lot of times we have this expectation that we have to be this superwoman, right? We've got to do it all. We've got to be an amazing mother. We've got to be able to hold the house down. We've got to be able to go out and kill it in our careers. We've got to be able to kill it in our communities, right? These are the expectations, especially as Black women, that we grew up knowing and understanding that we were supposed to do things a certain way. But the problem with that is that when we are um, too tied in to all of those expectations, sometimes we miss the point. Sometimes we get off track from what the purpose is that we're really supposed to be working towards. And even worse is that when we are so caught up on expectations, we stop allowing people as well as ourselves to be who we were truly called to be. You know, I often think of many times I didn't understand what my role was. It took a really long time for me to figure that out. And so God showed me that my role was to encourage people, that exhortation, right? And so before I realized that, I was constantly in this role where I was just teaching and doing all these things. And while there is some part of me that does really well with that, at the time I was teaching in a school and I was teaching children, right? And I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. And I felt like if I stopped doing that, I was abandoning, these kids, and, I just had all kinds of like shameful thoughts around the fact that this just wasn't for me, right? And so for so long, I just fought against it because I'm like, nope, I'm going to do it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Or, even though I clearly knew it wasn't, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was not supposed to be teaching children in a school setting for a long period of time. I knew it. But there was the fear that came along with it, right? There was the expectation that I was supposed to be a career woman, and this was, what I was supposed to be doing. And I couldn't leave and step away from that because, I was letting my family down. So many shameful thoughts came around that. And it wasn't until I removed the expectation, right? The expectation that I had to do it the way that the world said that I was supposed to do it. The world said that I was supposed to go to school, I was supposed to get married, I was supposed to have a job, I was supposed to, have my children, and that I was supposed to be super responsible, and that I was supposed to be a really good, caregiver, and that I was supposed to be this superwoman. But there was something inside of me that said that was not in alignment, right? And while all of those experiences that I was going through helped to shape me into who I was, and it ultimately helped me to figure out what I was supposed to do, there was a time when I realized it was time for me to leave, and I didn't because I was afraid. I was scared to walk away because the world told me that I had a stable job and I was supposed to stay in it unless I found something else. Well, that something else door wasn't quite opening for me. Those jobs that I thought that I should have been qualified for, that door wasn't opening for me. And I really had to step out on faith and follow God, right? So if anybody's hearing this and thinking I'm telling you to quit your job, that is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you do need to start following the Spirit. What is it that is stirring up in you? Some of you have been thinking about writing a book for a long time and you keep putting it off because you're afraid you don't know what to say. Some of you may be called to start a course and you're afraid to do it because you don't know where to start. Some of you may be called to go further in the careers that you're in, or to serve more and to do other things. And you're afraid to do it because you don't know how to start, or because it just feels foreign to you. And I'm here today to encourage you, to tell you to lean into that. Start looking for, researching, get all the information that you need in order to make that decision. Because again, remember, you're winning the game that you're playing. Right. And so if you're playing the game of fear, you're going to win it. You're going to win it. If you're playing the game of courage, you're going to win in that too. And it goes back into the way that our brains work, right? The way that they're wired is that whatever you're telling yourself is what's going to happen. So if you're telling yourself you can't do it, guess what? Your brain is going to find all of the evidence to show you why you can't do it. And it's where we always get those, oh yeah, that's right. When we try something and then it fails and we're like, oh, see, that's why I didn't do it, because I knew I couldn't. But that's not the case. It's that we just have to start changing our language. And so sometimes we have to let go of the language that we're using. So I encourage each of you this week to start listening to, how do you talk to yourself? What are you saying on a daily basis to you? And if that language is defeating, if that language is disappointing, if that language is negative, I encourage you to start talking back. And it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden be another person. But now that you know that you can start to change and shift the way that your life goes, now that you know that you get to win every game you're playing, what game do you want to be playing? Do you want to be playing the game where you don't get anything that you want? Do you want to be playing a game where life feels negative and frustrating and it just always feel like, you're on the losing side of that team? Or do you want to be playing a game where you feel empowered and in control of your life, where you're making a difference for yourself, for your family, for other people, and where you truly are following in the path and purpose that God has aligned for you? So if that is you and you want to win that game, then it starts with you figuring it out. Ask for help, get in the word, pray about it, ask God to show you where you're supposed to be going and what that direction is. And then start looking for the evidence of that thing in your life. The other thing that we have to let go of is the expectations that we have for other people. One of the biggest things that I have learned in life and in my personal wellness journey is that sometimes we tend to bring sorrow onto other people because of our own expectations. And it's funny because over the past few weeks, many of my clients, like, this conversation has been coming up, where the expectations that they have for themselves, they're shining that mirror onto other people, right? So if you are that person that's always on time and, you like everything to be planned out a certain way, and then someone else, sometimes they're your employees, sometimes they're your coworkers, sometimes, they're friends of yours, don't quite meet up to the expectation, we get frustrated, right? Or stressed out about it. And the thing is that we have to learn that each of us has a role. And when you go into 1 Corinthians, it talks about that. And I like that, God used the body as an example, right? It talks about our eye, has a different role and a function than our mouth, than our arms, our legs. Every part of the body has a different function, but it's all important. And the same thing is for us. We are all important, but we all function differently. We all have different gifts. We all have different strengths, and we all have different weaknesses. But the problem is that we're constantly focusing on weaknesses. We focus on the weaknesses of other people, right? Those people that don't quite measure up to the way that you would do things, or, there's a certain way that you would have done it. And so you're mad at your children because they didn't do it that way, right? But that creates so much frustration and it creates so much sorrow in people. And the thing is that God doesn't want us to do that. He doesn't shame us. He's not constantly looking at us to say, oh, you need to do this right and you need to do that right. No, God has given us just some amazing opportunities. He's given us a good foundation to look at, to say, this is where I want you to be. But he has never called us to be perfect. And so, and he's also very patient with us as we're learning how to do these things. And the same thing has to then come from us. First for ourselves, right? Letting go of some of the expectations of things that you think that you're supposed to be doing that aren't working well for you. I mean, you have some choices there. Either one, you learn the skill, and it talks about that in the scripture, or two, you ask for help, right? We don't have to be perfect and have it all together. Either learn it and figure out, like, what do you need to do to learn that skill? If you have the time and if that's something that you really, want to do. But if not, ask somebody, invest. There are so many people out here that have skills. There are so many entrepreneurs. There are so many people that are out here sharing their gifts and sometimes freely, right? We just have to find them. We got to find the information. And so that is one thing that you can always do to put yourself back in the driver's seat of your life, is to go find the information. And so not only do we have to make sure that we're not bringing sorrow to people, we have to really pay attention to the way that we're treating other people, especially those of you who are in leadership or those of you who have children or students. We have to pay attention to how we're treating each other. So many of us, and I know all of you can attest to something that happened to you when you were a child that you carry up into your adulthood. You know, I still can remember back until I was 3. I can remember back to 3 years old when a situation happened that really had nothing to do with me. And in that moment, my interpretation of it changed my trajectory. I thought I wasn't enough, right? I couldn't get into a childcare center. And it's so amazing that, you know, I'm able to pinpoint this particular story that comes to mind right now. But there was a childcare center that my mom was trying to put me in. And at the time, she didn't have the money, you know, to put me in it. And so we kept looking. But in my child mind, I thought it meant that I wasn't good enough. And, you know, I was young. I didn't know to ask, you know, but as I got older, that I'm not good enough followed me. It followed me. And then there were other things that happened along my life, you know, where different things happened, whether it was with my mom or maybe it was something that she said, or, you know, especially, you know, the money doesn't grow on trees thing, right? You know, our parents constantly saying that to us. Um, and for me, I internalized that, like, oh my gosh, I have to be really good at not overspending, right? And so that lack mindset that I ended up growing with, for some people, you know, as they get older, they go the whole opposite way. It's like, I'm going to get everything I want. But for me, it was a whole different thing. It made me go inside, right, and not to want things. And it was funny because I was watching, I love watching HGTV, and I happened to be watching one of the shows, you know, and for many years I would get so annoyed at some of the women on there who, you know, their husbands were working and doing all these things, and they would be like so opinionated about what they wanted in the house. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how dare they? You know, they're not, you know, even providing, and yet they have all these, you know, things that they want, you know, and they're like requiring of their husbands to provide and to put into that. But then I had to look at myself, right? Like, why was that bothering me? First of all, it was none of my business um, to be worried about what they wanted and what they thought. But when I shined the light a little deeper into that, I realized that it was my expectation, right? For so many years, I had bottled up and decided that my lack of finances when I was younger meant that I couldn't have, right? And so as an adult, I then started to carry that out in that I wouldn't ask for things, right? Because I just felt like I shouldn't have it, right? Oh, that's too expensive, or, you know, I would never ask for that. Like it became um a wall that I built around myself, around wanting things and allowing myself to have things. And so my frustration that was with those women was because that was something that I wasn't allowing myself to do. And so because I wasn't allowing it in myself, I was then projecting onto them a problem. And now, while, you know, that's not necessarily a situation where I was bringing sorrow to that person, that same scenario still shows up in other places in our lives. How many times are we judging people because they're not doing things the way that we do them? Or how many times are we judging people because they're doing things that we don't do or may not allow ourselves to do? You know, at the end of the day, we have to let go of these expectations and allow people to be who they are. Take it for face value. Why are we trying to change people to be other ways? It often makes me think of, too, mental illness, right? How often are we expecting people who don't think a certain way to do it, right? If somebody was in a wheelchair, we would come up with all kinds of accommodations and we'd make sure that we were doing what we needed to support them. But when it comes to mental illnesses or people thinking differently, we don't do that. And I bring this up because I myself have suffered with ADD, but I've also watched it in other people. Like so many people are like, oh, it doesn't exist, that doesn't happen, but it very well does exist. And for the people who are experiencing that type of thinking, the thing is that if you put us in a whole different scenario or a whole different place and atmosphere, our ADD would not be a problem. It's a problem here, though, because of the expectations, right? We live in a world that expects people to do things a certain way. And as much as we might say that we don't, we do. We expect people to show up at certain places. We expect people to work, sometimes with no play. Like that is just the culture, right? How many times have you heard people say, like, in order to, get the best, you got to be up early and you got to do all these things. We live in such a competitive society. And for many people who are not competitive by nature, it can really create feelings of lack, feelings of shame, feelings of guilt. And so we really do have to figure out, where do you fit in that, right? Like, who are you naturally? What comes naturally for you? And then find spaces where you can do that on a consistent basis. Now, I'm not saying, there won't be times where we have to learn how to do other things. But you know what? If you want to be happy in life, then you've got to show up authentically you in every situation. That's just it, right? Otherwise, we're constantly working against the grain to do something that is not for us. And in doing that, so many people are hurting themselves, right? That stress starts to eat at us because we're trying to do and to be something that we're not. And so imagine if we allowed others to show up authentically as ourselves in places where we can, where we have control, right? For those of you who own businesses, for those of you who are leaders in your companies, what ways are you able to open up and provide opportunities for people to be who they are? How many people, and teachers are, at the heart of what I do and who I work with, but how often are teachers placed in situations that aren't at their best, right? If I am great at teaching high school, why do you have me teach in second grade? Right? And so same thing for your companies that you're in. If you have people that excel in certain places, put them there. Allow them to shine, because when you put them somewhere where they don't, it causes them stress, it causes them frustration, and it causes you the same thing. Your company would be more productive if you utilize people's strengths and stopped focusing on their weaknesses. Because those people who are very time driven and who are very detail oriented are going to shine if you put them in those positions. And the people who are more creative and who have, bigger ideas and who need to be moving around and trying new things and adventurous, put them in those positions and they're going to excel. But when we hold people in these boxes of expectations that don't align with who they are, it creates stress and frustration for everyone. And so I encourage those of you who are in those leadership skills areas, and even parents, right? Are you putting your kids in positions where they can shine? Or are you expecting them to do things the way that you do it? So I encourage you to check in with that. And then finally, to really win the game that you're playing, you have to honor your yes and your no. There are going to be some places in your life where you really need to start setting some boundaries around what you are requiring of yourself and of your time. Once you figured out your purpose, then that's what you lead with, right? Whatever that is, whatever your God-given purpose is, once you find that, that's how you start to develop and to determine where your boundaries lie. Are the things that you're doing within that gift span, or are you dipping out and doing a million other things that are outside of your scope? And if so, I really encourage you to start looking at ways to funnel it back in, because you can always delegate, right? There are people out there who do those other things well. Ask them to do it. You don't have to do everything. There was a time where I was doing that, and my husband was often telling me, like, stop. But I wanted to do everything, right? Even though it was killing me, it was hurting me, to be able to do those things, trying to do everything all at once. I had to stop. And when I started delegating, I realized that the stress just fell off. I didn't have to do 10 things today. I could do 3 and ask, 6 other people or 7 other people to do the other ones. And so really honoring your yes and no. What things do you need to be saying yes to this week so that you're in alignment with your goals and you're in alignment with who you are? And what things do you need to say no to? People are always going to look at you and see, the best in you. And people are going to utilize that as much as you allow them to. So sometimes we have to say no, and you can provide a solution. Like, unfortunately, I can't do that, but here's the solution. And I'm not going to say I have perfected this, because I haven't. I'm still working just as much as I'm talking to you. These are things that I'm still working on, but I know that they help. And that is how we win the game that we're playing. That is how we win this game called life. That is how we win the wellness journey, is by making sure that we are creating boundaries for ourselves and for other people and staying within those confines. Say yes to you, yes to your purpose, yes to your gifts as you're serving people. But we need to say no to those things that are not in that basket, especially if it's pulling you away from your family, if it's pulling you away from using those gifts, if it's pulling you away from your peace, then we have to start saying no. So as I close out today, just a reminder that we are winning every game that we're playing, whether you're playing a good game or whether you're playing a game of bad habits. Either way, we get to win. And in order to really make sure that we're winning more in the wellness journey than we are in those bad habits, is that we need to make sure that we know our role, that we know who we are, and that we are sticking in there, and that we are doing things that are in alignment with who God has called us to be. 2, we need to let go of expectations for ourselves and other people. Allow people to be who they are and allow you to show up authentically who you are in every situation. And then finally, honor your yes and no. Say yes to those things that are serving you. Say no to those things that are not. Until next week, I thank you for being here, for supporting us. You can continue to support us by going to the She Is Still Dope network on all social media platforms. You can also support me by visiting Fit to You Wellness at all social media platforms, as well as fit2uwellness.com to learn more about peace, right? To learn more about how do you win that game that you're playing. For some of you, you may be needing support and you're wanting someone to help coach you along the way. Go on there, shoot me a message, let me know that you're needing some support. For those of you who are leaders in organizations and you're looking for someone to come in and to help you, to bring peace to your organization and to help your employees win the game that they're playing, then be sure to check me out at fit2uwellness.com to learn more about my workshops, my coaching programs, and my custom wellness and worksite programs. So until next time, make sure you're living well and make sure that you are being intentional in every moment, every day. Talk to you soon.